Kim McDonald. You're watching the Weather Network's live stream. I have Mark Robinson in the field. We've got meteorologist Matt Grinter as well. This is a storm that is stretching from the southern plains of the U.S. all the way eventually into Atlantic Canada. Myriad of warnings to indicate that. And some of the highest populated areas in the country, certainly in North America, are going to be impacted by this particular storm. We're talking about a lot of snow for some. We could see some mixing as well. Mark Robinson, who's been in a storm or two already so far this season. This is number 2 of the week in southern Ontario. Mark, you know, I just want, because you always drive in this kind of weather, tell me about prepping your car for this kind of storm.
Yeah, you know, my car may go well beyond what most people need. So I'll take you through the basic stuff. And that is, I've got extra jackets in there, extra boots, extra socks, extra clothes, as well as a pair of ski goggles. You again may not need that, but I do suggest having all the other stuff, just extra stuff, just in case. Now, as well in my car, I also happen to have a sleeping bag. Extra pillows, just in case I end up in the ditch, which in the past has happened. I've managed to get out of the ditch fairly quickly. But definitely the one thing that I always suggest, especially nowadays, if you're driving around, just making sure that your cell phone is charged and you've got your charge cable, you plug it into your car, because you don't want to be out there without the ability to have a bit of communication. And I can tell you, Kim, just like standing outside right now, the winds that are blowing past me right now, it's just so cold. And so that's one of the things, you know, if you are out of your car, keep in mind those batteries those lives can be shortened quite a bit by the cold. So just being prepared for just about everything is the best thing you could do. I always say it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the things I think people should do too, especially if they maybe work an overnight shift, something like that, bring the snow brush into the building or into the house, because when you come out and your vehicle is covered in snow, you don't want to have to open the door first and let all that snow blow in.
Yeah, that's a really good, I hadn't thought about that. That is clever. Kim, you're very clever. I did not think about it. I do have a shovel in my car, just in case. And it's not so much just in case, it's so much as that I've used that shovel for other people every single time I've been out in a winter storm. So it is absolutely invaluable. Just a little gardening shovel, not a big, driveway shovel, just a little gardening shovel, all you need, and that has saved more than a few people.
Yeah, I bet. You're out there with your shovel. That's great. Good advice from you. We're going to bring in meteorologist Matthew Grinter. I mean, the whole point of this live stream, Matt, is to answer some questions from our viewers, because people are concerned about this storm. They've been hearing a lot about it. There's lots of warnings on it as well. Someone wants to know, how long will the snow last on the ground, which is kind of an interesting question, because we haven't seen a whole lot of melting lately, Matt.
Yeah, we definitely haven't, and I think after this live stream I'm going to go outside to my car and grab my snow brush and bring it inside so that I'm a little bit more prepared for that. But yeah, as we've kind of noticed, it's been a little bit colder lately. We have had cold temperatures for the past couple of weeks, but the little warm up that we have overnight tonight, that's actually going to get pretty cold as we head into Thursday and Friday. So the snow's going to stay on the ground. We're not looking at a warm up anytime soon. So if you were watching us on Groundhog Day, which you noticed was, we're forecasting 6 more weeks of winter plus, because it is going to remain pretty chilly.
A lot of people were wondering too about when was the last time the GTA had this much snow at once. So we're talking about a forecast right now, Matt. We're not talking about, a guarantee. But even though the snow hasn't hit yet, we're expecting this to be pretty significant, even for areas in the GTA.
Yeah, and that's for sure. When we go back to this past weekend, we actually did have some snow over the weekend, that Saturday overnight into Sunday. The snowfall amounts ranged from 10 centimeters upwards to even 17 and 18 centimeters. So that was the last big snowfall that we had. And this one is, for some areas, it's going to be a little bit less, like Niagara. We'll get into some of those numbers. But for places north of Toronto and through Markham and Kitchener and Caledon, this is going to be bigger than that and probably the biggest snowfall of the season that we've had so far.
You know, this is not going to be easy driving, and the TTC is ready for it. I know a lot of people are a little nervous behind the wheel, especially when we get into snowstorms. I know I'm one of those people. Sometimes new Canadians, not used to this kind of weather, don't necessarily want to drive in it. Our Michael Van spoke with one of the people from TTC to ask how they are preparing for this particular storm. Here he is.
Toronto, you are in the eye of this incoming snowstorm, and of course travel trouble is expected as this system moves across the region overnight Wednesday into Thursday, and that of course means lots of impacts for your commutes. And of course there are options out there. If you are normally a driver, you can take the TTC, and that's exactly what the City of Toronto is encouraging those who can to do. Now, of course, if you can avoid travel at all costs, it's a good idea to do so. This is one of those events that you want to make certain that you are exercising the utmost caution. Now, I did get a chance to speak with a representative from the TTC to get an idea of how they're planning for this major winter event.
They are our Super Bowl. The fact is that more people will turn to transit, and we welcome that, and we are ready for that. The TTC is out there right now applying kill frost and salt across our networks. Our job is to make sure that our overhead power is working on the streetcar network so that we can deliver as much reliable service as possible. We're also cancelling tonight's scheduled early subway closure on Line 1, which was between Bloor Young and Osgood stations. That will enable us to redeploy all of those shuttle buses out onto local bus routes to make sure that we can maintain a good level of service. We'll be running storm trains throughout the network. That does clear the tracks, particularly only in the open cut sections that aren't in tunnels. Additional to that, tonight we will be storing the majority of our trains actually in the tunnels rather than in our yards.
Of course, just like here at the Weather Network, these major snow events are just like the Super Bowl for the TTC. So they train for these events, they plan for these events, and so that is a great resource if you do need to get around the city Wednesday night into Thursday morning. That is the way to go to keep yourself and your family safe.
Also, a spokesperson from Uber was talking about the fact that a lot of people don't like to drive in weather like this, so you can expect Uber surge charges. They think that they will have more people wanting drivers than they actually have drivers, and so the prices will be a little bit higher. Mark Robinson, I have a question for you from one of our viewers. Which rush hour will be the worst for the GTA?
You know what, Kim? I'm going to have to say that's a tricky question because I can think of like pros and cons for both of them. The pro for tonight being the really busy one is that everybody went to work this morning in conditions that were just fine, and maybe commuting back home in conditions that are the opposite of just fine. But there won't be quite as much snow as we see on Thursday morning, so that might make the travel easier. But Thursday morning, you have less people, but more snow. So it's really tough to say. I'm going to say both are going to be bad within the GTA, because I think that's a pretty much the way it works in the GTA on a sunny, warm day.
Yeah, and I have a second question for you. Because Ottawa, obviously a little farther east, people want to know about which rush hour will be the worst for Ottawa.
Now, that one is probably going to be tomorrow morning. I have a writer friend of mine who's also a teacher, Brandon. He's out in Ottawa. He lives just outside of Ottawa, and he's already told me, and because I've told him the storm is coming, and he said, yeah, probably going to have a snow day tomorrow. So yeah, Ottawa, definitely, I think tomorrow is going to be the worst of the two. And that's also just because that system is going to take that little longer to get across towards eastern Ontario. So we're going to see a loading of the snow more into Thursday morning than we do on the overnight and Wednesday.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We can see the snow starting to blow behind you, at least blowing across the highway. I'm bringing in our meteorologist, Matthew Grinter, as well to talk a little bit about this. I'm calling you Matthew. It seems so formal, Matt. Okay, big question. This is the biggest one of all, Matt, and it has to do with schools. Has to do with those buses running, those schools being open. This is a huge chunk of real estate that's being impacted, though. We've got a massive area from southwestern Ontario all the way out into Quebec. So I mean, we don't make this decision. We don't make it. But we can maybe take a guess as to who would be more likely to call a snow day.
No, that's for sure. I think everyone's going to be happy not just to have a snow day, but to also play in the snow. So that's definitely a big question. And we'll first look at our snowfall forecast. This is going to start falling through the afternoon over the next couple of hours. It's already started a little bit in southwestern Ontario, but it's through the overnight hours and lingering into tomorrow. So when we look at the amounts, we're talking 15 to 25 centimeters to 35 centimeters through a good part of southern Ontario, and especially on that 401 corridor. So if we look at, let's say, our commute timings and when we're going to be looking at some of that heaviest snow, because that's really important, because if we have that snow ending at midnight, then the road crews have a lot of time to really pick up the pace and get those roads cleared for the morning. So for this evening, if you're in southwestern Ontario, definitely trying to leave work rather quickly over the next short while to see a little bit lighter snow, because as we head into the evening rush hour commute, not only do we have that snow, but we've also got that freezing rain as well. So that could poke in near the end of the commute time. And then by the time we get to tomorrow morning, we still have some of that precipitation falling. So that's going to make the roads a little bit slick and slippery. And that could also increase the chances for looking at a snow day tomorrow for children. Now, zooming into the GTA a little bit, getting into the timing here, this is where it's best to look at starting to leave work shortly. So we're looking at our snow coming in through the next little while. We'll start to see that build and fill into the GTA as we head through the beginning of the rush hour commute. But once we get near the end, that's when we're going to start to see some of that heavier snow push in, and then continuing overnight. Now, this is one of those little caveats that we want to focus on is as we head into Thursday morning, that little bit of green and that pink that pushes into the GTA, that comes in during the morning commute, but we have cold temperatures in behind. So that could create some icy conditions for the morning commute through the entirety of it. And then as Mark was mentioning, for Eastern Ontario, that snow really picks up through the overnight hours. So this is that prime time, let's say, for schools to be canceled, for children to be happy, because as we head through tomorrow morning, we're in the thick of it in terms of that heavy snow. So this is where we've got the best chance for the worst commute being Thursday morning for Ottawa and Eastern Ontario, and really picking up that snow for kids to play in it early morning.
We've already heard a report from Trillium Lakelands area. That's just in Durham, east of Lindsay, and they're already closing all their schools for tomorrow. So they're taking this preemptive measure. That means kids, you can sleep in and then maybe get out and play in the snow. So it's positive for you. Parents now having to figure out what they're going to do with the kids. I got to speak with OPP Sergeant Kerry Schmidt. He is the head of the Highway Safety Division, and he talked about how important it is in weather like this to give yourself a lot of time.
We give ourselves just enough time to get to where we're going, and when we need to slow down, we don't realize that actually takes more time, and we don't seem to give us that time. So I find drivers now trying to go as fast as possible, even in those poor conditions, to make up for perceived extended travel times. So we really need to just change our mindset and understand it will take longer, but we need to give ourselves the opportunity to be able to adjust our driving and not feel pressured or under stress because we're now running late.
All right, Mark, you know Kerry Schmidt as well, and you've seen this kind of thing on the roads, giving yourself extra time. Sometimes it's the beginning of the storm when there's just a light layer of snow that the roads are the most slippery and people aren't, they're not as concerned. And so they may be going a little faster, and the brake time, boy, it's not what it was when the roads were dry.
Oh, Kim, that's one of the things, like I've got snow tires on my car. I've had snow tires on my car. It's 4-wheel drive. But even with those, if it's slippery, you still have a much longer braking time. So you might have a bit of stability when you're accelerating, when you're going around turns, and you're taking, you're moving from lane to lane. But the whole thing that you just got to remember is that there's just that much extra time you are going to need to stop. And I can tell you, it's a bit of a horrible feeling when you hit the brakes and the car just continues to slide forward, or you can feel it begin to slide across the snow, and you can't do much at that point other than take your foot off the brake and apply it a little more gently, maybe even bounce it up and down a little bit if you don't have anti-lock brakes. Anti-lock brakes will help with that, but either way, just assume that you need at least double, if not more, distance to stop when you're dealing with conditions like this. It's just, as I said, I've had it happen to me, everybody, and I've been through so many storms, and it still happens to me. So anybody can run into that sort of trouble. So please, please, please be careful. I do not want to be filming you in a ditch.
No, you don't. Yes, good advice. And we'll be checking in with you later as the storm ramps up. I just wanted to mention that Toronto District School Board has canceled all programming post 6 p.m. tonight. So check their website, Toronto District School Board. If you had something on the go, adult education classes, that kind of thing, they are shutting it all down after 6 p.m. tonight in advance of this storm. Pearson Airport saying, listen, this is a big snowstorm that's coming. If you are traveling, please check ahead for your flight. We're looking at video from this past weekend, the snow that came down there, clearing, obviously, the runways. It's going to get progressively worse as we get through the overnight. And I think if you have flights first thing in the morning, that could be delayed or canceled. And Matt, I'm thinking people want to escape this kind of weather, and they may not be able to, based on the forecast. And obviously, delays are not just what happened at Pearson Airport, they are what's happening in other places across North America too.
No, exactly, Kim. And that map that you have in the background there, that's showing all the alerts, not just in Canada, but through the U.S. Midwest, through New England, through the U.S. Northeast as well. That's going to cause delays, not just in southern Ontario and Quebec and Atlantic Canada, who are also seeing this system, but also stateside, which impacts the flights. And if we did take a quick look at radar here, we can see how expansive and widespread this snow is all the way in through Kansas and Missouri, Illinois. So it is pretty wide reaching already through almost all of Michigan, and then now making its way into southern Ontario. So we're starting to see a little bit of that snow push in. We saw that on Mark's stream there. So he's got a little bit of that snow that's falling, a little bit of those gusty winds as well. So we can see that from Sarnia to London, down in through the Niagara region, we're starting to see a little bit of that snow fill in. In the GTA, we'll start to see that up on deck next. So this is that time where you should look at maybe packing it in, driving home before we get into that heavier snow, because we know that's going to extend that those travels for your commute home.
Where it's coming from and all of the places, the states that have been impacted already and will be impacted. So someone wanted to know, is this the same storm that's coming to Atlantic Canada? Because I know a lot of people are already talking about the next one, and this could be a significant storm for the Maritimes. Like for some areas, sure, sea effect snow has been a big deal this winter, but for others, it's been a bit hit and miss.
No, exactly. And this system, as we saw with those alerts, is very wide-reaching. So here's a look at from Wednesday afternoon. We see that storm pushing into Ontario and then into Quebec for Thursday. And then through the day on Thursday, we see this push into the Maritimes and then also eventually into Newfoundland as well. For Newfoundland, not as big of a system as what we saw over the weekend, because we know that there was 40 centimeters of snow in St. John's, which was really the first big winter storm of the season. So when you think about 10 to 15 centimeters, still for this year, because it's been pretty light so far, it is a big event, but not compared to that 40 centimeters. And that's the same with Atlantic Canada as well. For the Maritimes, New Brunswick, from Fredericton to Moncton and further north, you've got some of that heavier snow. But areas south of there in through St. John's, along the Fundy Shores and in through Nova Scotia, we're actually going to see a pretty bit of a messy day on Thursday and in through the overnight hours. We can see that those ice pellets pushing in Thursday evening to southern parts of New Brunswick, in through Nova Scotia, and then even getting into a little bit of that freezing rain and also rain in behind. So a little bit of a warmer system. and then that moves out for Friday morning, and then that moves into Newfoundland, bringing that snow for the overnight hours into Friday morning. And it's just the southern shores through the Burin, the Canagra Peninsula, and the Avalon as well, where we get into a little bit of those ice pellets, and then that moves offshore. So a pretty quick system for Atlantic Canada, but a very wide-reaching system all the way from, it started in Texas, and it's going to end up all the way to St. John's.
Yeah, we're all in this together, Matt. Thank you. Toronto has issued Peel and York District school boards are canceling community use of their schools tonight. So again, that's similar. If you had any programming for the evening hours, that's all coming to an end for Peel and York. We already talked about Toronto District School Board. Ottawa is canceling their buses for tomorrow. Probably a good idea. This is going to be Ottawa's heaviest snowfall of the season so far, and the morning commute will be the worst for Ottawa. And the Toronto Zoo is closed tomorrow. I'm sure the polar bears will be having a great time, but unfortunately not taking visitors tomorrow. This is a big deal for the city of Toronto. There's an emergency in place. Michael Van found out more about that. Here he is.
Winter is in full force here in Toronto, where the city has issued a significant snowfall condition and major weather event. Now, here's what that means for you. If you drive a car and you typically park on the street, you're going to want to make certain that you are not in a snow route tonight after 10 p.m. when that declaration goes into effect. Now, the city has to prioritize when we have these major winter weather events. The city has to prioritize keeping certain routes clear because the infrastructure is just not in place to get everything clear all at once when we're dealing with that much snowfall. So if you do park on the street overnight, make certain that you're not in one of those snow routes. If you are, your car will likely be towed. You will incur the fee from that, as well as a potential additional $200 fine. Not worth it. Don't do it. And the city is counting on you to help keep everyone safe by keeping those roadways clear. Of course, this is a major winter weather event, so if you can stay home, it's best to do so. Hunker down and just wait for this one to be over.
Good advice. Yeah, if you don't want to drive or you don't have to drive, don't do it. Unfortunately, Mark, you do have to drive, thankfully. You are experienced in this kind of weather, which we all appreciate. We know that you will be mindful behind the wheel and you'll give us your first accounts, which is great. You know, it's cold right now. You've been commenting on the cold air, but part of the problem with this system, or what makes it a little bit more complex, is the fact that the temperatures may be changing for some and getting a little bit warmer.
Yeah, I mean, Kim, just to jump back for a second, I think there's a saying at the Weather Network, don't do what Mark does. You know, so that's going to be one of those things I'm going to stick with. Yes, I do have I've been through a lot of snowstorms and definitely going to be a tricky one. But you are correct when you talk about that switchover, and that's something I've been watching very closely because with these storms, the ones that give us the most snow, they're often fueled by the warm air that's coming up off of the Gulf of Mexico. And I'm putting an emphasis on that. Don't ask me why. Oh, that's cold. So that warm air moving all the way up to it's providing a lot of the fuel, the moisture for it, the cold air coming down from around, basically from toward the Arctic, coming around there, switching that snow over, or that precipitation over to snow. And of course, when you have all that warm air moving up, sometimes you will have that precipitation coming down as rain. Where that's going to be is always the million-dollar question, and all of us meteorologists work so hard to nail that, especially when it comes to Southern Ontario, because it can make all the difference. We could have that snow-rain line, right on the 401, and downtown gets rain. But if that snow line is, say, right along Lakeshore, suddenly downtown Toronto gets 25 centimeters of snow instead of rain, and that can make a huge difference for a lot of people. This one, I think we're relatively comfortable with where we're putting it. I'll leave Matt to give the details on that one, but it does look like sort of just south of Hamilton through Niagara may get that little bit of switch over to that more liquid precipitation. I'm going to be out and about probably very early tomorrow morning just to sort of find that line, drive around just to see how bad it is. I am just going to do a very basic drive of Guelph, where I live, to Oakville and just see how long it takes me to get there. And I'm guessing it's going to take a while.
Yes, it will. Mark, we're looking forward to seeing you on the live stream tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Make sure to tune in for that. Mark Robinson, our storm hunter, will be out in the morning commute as well. This just coming in, McMaster is closing as of 4 p.m. local. So McMaster University in Hamilton closing as of 4 p.m. Nothing's happening there this evening. No evening classes. U of T campuses are closing at 5 p.m. So McMaster, U of T, both making the call to close early so that people can get home safely and stay at home safely. You know, we are just getting over the last storm, which hit on Saturday night in and around the GTA. For the GTA, this was the biggest snowfall of the season so far, Saturday night. But you know, there are a few differences with this one. We're going to go over that with Matt Grinter. And one of the differences was that it happened on a weekend, Matt, but there are a lot of differences when it comes to the actual system itself. So let's go over some of that. Mark touched on it, but it's a real difference between the fluffy snow that we saw on Saturday night.
No, that's for sure, Kim. And over the weekend, these were some of those numbers that we did see. Burlington saw 17 centimeters, Toronto Pearson saw 15 centimeters. That's the largest snowfall of the season. But it was relatively easy to shovel. We had fluffy snow, so you could almost snow blow it away. That's going to be a little bit different with this system. So there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is we're getting also more moisture. So it's been a different year for Southern Ontario. We've gotten lots of smaller clipper systems that have that moisture come from the Pacific. Now, when we have Gulf moisture, it brings in a lot more precipitation, so there's higher potential for more snow. So that's one of the big differences. We're going to have a lot more moisture in the atmosphere to get a lot more snow this time around. But the difference, as you mentioned, is also the temperatures. So last time we weren't talking about mixing. This time around we are. And because our temperatures are much closer to that 0 degree line, we've got even 1-2 degrees pushing into the Niagara region as we head in through tomorrow morning, that's going to create a little bit of a wetter snow. So it's going to be much heavier to shovel. So it may seem like it's not blowing around as much for the Niagara region and Hamilton and along the Lake Erie shorelines, but it's going to be much heavier. Whereas if you are further north towards Barrie, Ottawa, it is going to be a little bit more of that fluffier snow. So we're going to see a lot of different sort of types of snow in different locations with this system.
I wanted to clarify something, Matt, before we move on. It is the Mississauga campus only at this point that is closing. So the U of T Mississauga campus closing as of 5 p.m. for the evening. I wanted to clarify that because I just said U of T earlier. You know, if you do have any night classes in any of these universities that you may be concerned about, you'd probably like to check in on their websites. So we're talking about the past weekend. We're talking about this storm coming up. But if you are a forecaster, you're probably looking ahead to the weekend as well. This gets tricky. I mean, where are we going to put all this snow, Matt? This is interesting too because there's not a ton of melting going on with this. Temperatures are, I mean, once we get that little warm up, it looks like temperatures are going to stay on the cold side. Can we touch a little bit on the upcoming system on the weekend?
That we sure can. And I think just before we get into the details of the weekend system, just looking at the 7-day forecast for Toronto, this is pretty similar to the rest of Southern Ontario and Southern Quebec as well, is we do have that quick little warm up with this system with that 1 degree on Thursday, but afterwards for the next 7 days, we are staying below freezing. So, and definitely as we head into next week, we've got those really cold double-digit temperatures. But you see on Saturday and Sunday, we do have those flurries, and that's because we do have a third system coming in. And this is going to look, it's going to bring similar amounts or a little bit less. Just a quick early look at our forecast. But we are going to have some flurries pushing in Saturday through the day. And then what you'll notice is it becomes a little bit heavier as we head through Saturday evening, overnight, and in through Sunday. So this is going to be tracking south of the border, which means we'll be looking at more of an all snow event. The question is just how much do we get into that heavier snow, or if that system tracks a little bit further south, we'll still get into that snow, but it'll be a little bit lighter. So ultimately, over this weekend, we are getting snow. It's just a matter of how much are we getting.
Great winter for tobogganing, great winter for skiing. Maybe if you built a backyard rink, that's not melting anytime soon. Not great winter for driving. We're going to head over now to, again, OPP Sergeant Carrie Schmidt, who wants to talk a little bit about getting your car ready before you take off, especially tomorrow morning or at any time. If there's snow on it, you got to get that off. Here he is.
One thing I want to remind drivers as well is when they get into their vehicle, and there has been some snow overnight or ice, you need to clear your vehicle before you head out. That snow might blow off. You might think it's easier to blow it off when you're going down the road, but that can be a whiteout condition for drivers behind you. And if it's chunks of ice, that can go flying off, causing crashes or smashing windshields. It really is your responsibility to make sure your vehicle is clear of ice and snow, make sure you can see all 360 degrees around it, and that you are not creating a hazard for other motorists around you.
Good advice, as always, clear that car off. I mean, I've been behind a truck or two where the snow is flying off the top of it. I know it's hard to get the snow on those higher vehicles, but you need to do it or else you're going to blind the person behind you. Mark Robinson is with me now. Mark, we're talking a lot about driving and precautions. I mean, obviously, number one, we don't want people to drive if they don't have to. Tonight, things are really going to get ramped up. But let's talk about what's happening now, how it feels now. This is prep time. I think we still have a little bit of time to get ready for this storm before things really get intense.
Yeah, I mean, Kim, I can tell you right now, what it feels like is cold, very, very cold. That wind just coming straight out of the east, and I'm in a fairly clear area. I'm well off to the side of the road, just right at one of the exit lanes on Highway 6, north of the 401. Yeah, it's nice and clear. So when I have this up, when you're first talking to me, that's because it is very cold on this side of my face, and that I think is one of the dangers we often get with these storms, is these whiteout type conditions. Now, it's nothing like that right now. You are correct. If you're going to get ready, get home, I suggest going home early. Just tell them the Weather Network said you can go home early. And that way you'll get home, no problems, because later on when things start to happen, when the snow really starts to come down, likely going to be after dark, you really don't want to be driving in those conditions. I have done that more than once just to show people, this is what it can be like. And there are times where I literally cannot see the end of the end of the hood of my vehicle. That's the kind of conditions we could see in some areas, especially if you're talking about areas north of Toronto, so rural areas, when you have large fields and the wind can blow across the fields. A lot of this snow, because it's not going to get all that cold, or all that warm, excuse me, a lot of that snow is going to easily be able to be picked up and blown around. That's when you get drifting on the roads. If the plows can't keep up, you're going to get drifts, and you aren't going to expect that. So I would say, we've gotten used to work from home. I'm going to say you should probably think about that for Thursday, just because it's much easier to make the commute from your bed to your desk as opposed to from your bed down the 401 to the office.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm giving you permission. You can skip work tomorrow, or at least you can work from home.
Good advice, and it's easier too if the kids are home from school. Thanks, Mark. MTO, by the way, is about 1,400 vehicles ready for action, and they will be out with the plows. So it's best to stay home regardless. Let them do their work. The fewer vehicles on the road in their way, the faster that it all gets cleared up. Matt, winter storm warnings for Ottawa, for Montreal. I mean, these are cities that are used to winter, but this is a little bit more significant, at least this season and in the last couple of years.
No, exactly. And I think that's even looking at comparing to the past, even though it may seem like last winter wasn't a real winter because it was so warm, even looking at the forecast for Ottawa, it is the potential that they could have a top 20 or top 30 snowfall event of all time. And this is taking records back to the late 1800s. So this is still a big event. And what we notice here, Eastern Ontario, we start to see that snow push in after the evening commute. So Wednesday is actually looking pretty good for Ottawa, but it's overnight and Thursday morning that we really get into that heavy, thick snow. So I'm going to dive in a little bit closer here for Eastern Ontario. or for Eastern Ontario and Southern Quebec as well. So as I mentioned, that 8 p.m. Ottawa, starting to see that snow push in. For Montreal, it is closer to around midnight when we start to see that snow move in. And then it's the overnight hours that we really start to see those snowfall rates ramp up. We're not just talking 1 or 2 centimeters an hour, but 4, 5, 6 centimeters an hour, which can come down rather quickly and accumulate really fast. And then by the time we get into tomorrow morning, we're talking 6 a.m. and onwards through the rest of the morning. We're looking at some of that heaviest snow for Ottawa and Montreal. So that is going to continue through the morning. And just looking at some of those snowfall amounts that we have for Eastern Ontario, 25 to 35 centimeters for Ottawa and surrounding areas, Ottawa, Gatineau, Arnprior. We do have some very heavy snow. And then just touching on Southern Quebec, again, also getting some of that heavier snow through the Laurentians, Mont-Tremblant. If you are looking at, let's say, calling in sick on Friday, you're going to have a pretty good powder day on at Tremblant. But of course, in the city, this is going to be a rough travel day for Thursday, especially the morning commute. And when we talk about Montreal, 20 to 30 centimeters of snow. In the downtown core, there's not a lot of place to move that snow, so it does have to be moved out. So they're going to have a pretty snowy day on Thursday.
Yeah, no kidding. And, you know, we've had school closures now for parts of Western Quebec. Again, check with your school board, check online. They often have social media and they will make these announcements there. Ottawa canceling all school buses for tomorrow morning as well. Winter parking ban is in place for Ottawa from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Thursday and Friday. Friday it may be lifted if the snowfall is less than forecast. That's what they're making the announcement now for as well. And now there is still time to prep for this storm for some of you, especially if you're in Ottawa or Montreal. The storm's on the way. So here are 3 things that you can do right now.
An active winter weather pattern is in the forecast. So here are 3 things you should know before the storm strikes. Clear snow off your driveway, sidewalks, and vehicle as soon as you can. Otherwise, the cold air is going to harden the snow and it's going to become an icy mess, just like this one.
I learned this the hard way. Speaking of ice, avoid a slip or a slide by using salt, sand, or even kitty litter. Keep in mind that salt helps to melt ice and snow most efficiently when the temperature is above -10 degrees Celsius. Try using alternatives like sand, grit, and kitty litter to add traction when the temperature is below -7 degrees Celsius. If you can, avoid unnecessary travel, but if you must head out, first make sure the exhaust pipe is clear of any snow to allow for proper ventilation. Otherwise, carbon monoxide becomes an extreme danger. Always remember to drive carefully and keep a safe distance between cars. During wet, snowy, or icy conditions, you'll need more time to allow your car to brake safely. If you do end up in a ditch, remain in your vehicle and call the appropriate services for help.
All right. We have advice for before and after. Victoria Fan Alvarado, thank you for that. We're going to go back out to our storm hunter, Mark Robinson, who is getting ready ahead of the storm itself. We're getting lots of questions on social media, YouTube, for example. People want to know, will this be the biggest snowstorm for the winter? Now, I don't know if they mean up until now, or we're not going to get worse than this. But, you know, this is one of those tricky questions to answer, Mark.
Hey, I was going to say, that's like the trickiest question to answer. If I could answer that, I think I would, like I'd be the ultimate storm chaser, because then I'd know where the tornadoes are too. Now, having said all that, we have passed the average coldest time of the year for Southern Ontario. Now, that doesn't mean we can't get really cold temperatures, and we do expect next week to be very cold again, but we are sort of beginning to creep up. So I can, a little bit of hope. We are getting to creep up just a little bit. But in terms of the storms that, say, I've been through this year, I mean, it's not anything like the Gravenhurst storm, which we had, 150 centimeters of snow. But that was lake effect snow. This is system. This is going to hit everybody. So we're all going to be in the same boat all at once. And that sort of becomes, that's definitely a bigger impact, say, than the snow squalls, because snow squalls are, fairly narrow, but they can produce a lot of snow. This is going to hit everybody, and it is already starting. And I can tell you that looking towards the east, I'm looking east, you're looking north there, sort of up the Highway 6 towards Guelph. The snow is now hitting me in the face. When we first started talking about 45 minutes ago, there wasn't that much snow, and I was actually a little concerned I wasn't going to be able to show you the snow. Now I can show you the snow. There it is. Ha! There it is. Sort of, you know. But right now, not covering the roads yet, as you can see. But that will change, especially as we get into those heavier snowfall amounts, so snowfall rates. When they really get up there, they can cover the roads pretty quick. Even the treated roads. And no matter how many plows we have, sometimes it's difficult for the plows to keep up. So just be aware of that. As we get into, potentially going to work on Thursday morning. Usually what happens is the main routes, like Highway 6 like this, like the 401, the 400, 403, those ones tend to be fairly well plowed, but it's the getting to those roads that can be the big problem. So your side streets, you're gonna have to wait. They're gonna take a while. So if you can take Thursday off, take it off. Now, I literally was just texting my friend Brandon, who's in Ottawa, and he is a teacher, and he said snow day is happening for him. School Bus Authority and OC Transpo have canceled all routes. So that's like up to the minute, and you're definitely seeing a lot more cancellations.
And where was
as
that,
this
Mark?
snow creeps closer and closer. That's Ottawa.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's Ottawa, and that's literally, as I said, that's from a teacher, my friend Brandon, from Ottawa.
People are asking about Pearson Airport and flights. I mean, this is again going to be impacting flights, very likely. I think that people have to think about with a storm like this. You can talk about Owen Sound and the kind of snow that Owen Sound might get over the winter, but 15 centimeters, 20 centimeters in the Toronto area is a different beast, Mark.
Yeah, it's always about where it's going to be. Like, if it's hitting lots of snow in the middle of nowhere in a bunch of farmers' fields in the middle of winter, nobody cares. Like, it's just not going to have high impact. But put that 15 centimeters over the fourth largest city in North America, and you're going to slow everything down. Now, just you're talking about the airport. George Karunas, you're our friend and mine. He's trying to fly out to LA tomorrow. So I just said to him earlier today, good luck. Good luck, sir.
Good luck. Yeah, you want to escape this kind of weather, but you may not be able to. That's the unfortunate thing about flying in the winter in southern Ontario. Thanks, Mark. Matt, so many questions. People always want to know about where they live specifically and what kind of snow they're going to get. We've been paying attention to the big cities, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and the kind of snow that we're anticipating in those areas. Let's go to Wallaceburg now. It's switched. Anyway. Should I go to this one? What do you think? Will the GTA see a snow to rain switchover? And I don't want to ignore the person from Wallaceburg who wanted to know how much snow that they were getting. So can we touch on both of those things? Because there has been a lot of talk about maybe some rain mixing in, maybe a little freezing rain mixing in. Temperature plays such a role when it comes to precipitation.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, is it depends where you are. That is going to be how much snow you're going to see, and of course that rain mixing in is a big question. And we'll go over a little bit of areas outside of the GTA. We've talked a little bit about that mixing that we could see, but for areas like Owen Sound, you mentioned them, Wyerton, they have just been getting a lot of snow this year already, and this is just adding that insult to injury because they are getting a lot more, 25 to 35 centimeters up north there as well. And so touching on, that GTA, are we getting into a little bit of that mixing? That is still, I don't want to say up for question or debate, but there is the chance that we could have a little bit of that warmer air pushing in that could give a mix, more so for southern parts of Toronto, for Mississauga, Hamilton, and especially down in through the Niagara region. So we could get a little bit of mixing that can reduce our snowfall amounts just a little bit if we do get into that. And that's also going to be another factor that can play into delays at the airport, because if there is that warmer air aloft, that can create some icing issues as planes are taking on and off. So they may have to add some de-icing operations that can take them a little bit longer to get off the ground.
We're talking about wind too and blowing snow with this. I have another question for you, Matt, so you can get prepared for this one. How bad will conditions be when it reaches southern Quebec? We've been looking at some pretty impressive numbers right now for the forecast. Of course, it is a forecast. But when we combine the cold air that has settled into Quebec, I mean, this could be pretty significant.
No, exactly. And They have had a couple of systems throughout the year this year, but it's been, again, those smaller ones, very similar to southern Ontario. So there is a big difference with this system because we are talking heavy snow, and it's during the week, it is during the rush hour commute. And so just going over their timing a little bit as well, Wednesday evening, late evening, we'll start to see a little bit of that snow push into Montreal and through Gatineau. And it's the overnight region or overnight time frame that we're going to see that heavy snow really pick up. But what makes it worse is that the heaviest snow is actually going to be during the Thursday morning commute and rush hour time. So traffic, there's a good chance that it'll be at a standstill and create lots of slippery and reduced visibility, because at this time period as well, we are looking at very strong wind gusts. So if you're driving on the roads, this could create some visibility issues and make it much harder to see where the roads are, especially if you're driving just outside of the city where you've got those open fields. And then as we head through the evening commute, we are still going to see impacts Thursday evening. They're going to be a little bit less because the visibility is going to be a little bit better. Not as much snow is going to be falling. But by that point in time, that's when we're looking at a lot of that snow being on the ground already. So we're talking 20 to 30 centimeters in and around Montreal and Montreal Island. If you're driving in from the north, or let's say later in the day driving from Montreal up to Tremblant or north of the city, you'll be getting into heavier amounts as well, where you could see upwards to 30 to 40 centimeters of snow. And that's the same amount for Quebec City. So all along the St. Lawrence is where we've got that heavy snow, and even into the eastern townships. So pretty well all of southern Quebec is getting 20 plus centimeters of snow.
I'm going to get back to you with a couple of questions, Matt. One, I want to ask you about Milton. Somebody from Milton is asking if they'll also see lake enhancement on top of the system snow, and from Etobicoke asking about snow there. So Milton, Etobicoke, I'm going to give you a minute to look that up, but I just want to go now to a feature about driving in snow squalls, because obviously that's a whole different beast as well. Take a look.
Hey Ontario, remember the snow squalls from last year? Yeah, they're back, and I'm going to give you just a quick little refresher about driving in the snow squalls, because they're not unique to Ontario, but they do form a big part of our winter season. One of the most important things when it comes to snow squalls is that you get a very abrupt change from being able to see everything is nice and clear into the full whiteout condition. That is one of the biggest dangers that snow squalls pose. One of the other things with snow squalls, you've got very, very strong winds on either side of it. In the center, not as much wind, but a lot of snow. So no matter what, you're going to be dealing with some very changeable conditions, very nasty conditions, very quickly. One of the things you don't want to do is make big changes very quickly. By that, I mean, don't steer all of a sudden, or hit the brakes really fast, or hit the gas really fast. All of those things can cause issues with traction. One of the other things you can do, if you've got it, put your car into snow mode. That will engage those all four-wheel drives if you've got it. That'll make the car a little steadier. But keep in mind, just because the car is steady does not mean that it stops in any less of a distance. So that is one thing to be very careful of.
Just saw a couple of plows go by you, Mark. Tell me a little bit about the traffic at this point in time. Do you think that there are fewer vehicles on the road, or do you think people are more anxious to get home at this point in time?
I know this area pretty well, Kim, and as does your brother. This is actually more cars than we normally see. I think people are trying to get home, said, you know, I think I'm going to listen to the Weather Network today and head home early. I mean, we're getting closer to 4 o'clock. A lot of people are like, oh, it's 4 o'clock, I'm out, I'm gone. So I think that's a bit of a part of it too. I just like to see everyone getting home before the snow really starts to hit. But Kim, I can tell you, like in the last 10 minutes, since literally last time we talked, snowfall rates have really jumped up, and the wind hasn't really changed, but you're just getting more and more snow. So as I look sort of up the road here, I can start to not see as far as I used to. And that is definitely going to slow everybody down, because it's sort of combining with a lot of people headed home. So if you are, heading home, just take it easy. That's all I can say, and be prepared for not getting home as quickly as you might want to. Don't rush home if you don't have to, because this is it. This is the beginning. We are now seeing the beginning of this system, probably pushing into Toronto at this point. I'm just a little bit west of Toronto over in Guelph. It's a good spot to sort of say, hey, Toronto, this is what's heading your way. What is interesting, though, Kim, and I always like this, those winds at the surface are coming from the east, but the storm is going east, so like it's kind of an opposite direction kind of thing. It's I just find that neat. That's just the meteorologist in me going, ooh, that's cool.
Again with you, Mark, it's going to be even worse. When I was driving in, I could see that it was an east wind because the breakers were just coming off of Lake Ontario and crashing into the shore as I crossed the Skyway Bridge, which is always a good indication that the winds are coming in from the east. Checking in with Matt Grinter. Okay, Matt, I gave you some homework. We talked a little bit about Milton, someone wanting to know if lake enhancement was a factor, and then in Etobicoke, west of Toronto, wanting to know again how much snow they're going to see.
Yeah, and yourself and Mark teed me up perfectly with those easterly winds. And that's exactly what we are seeing, and that's how we see lake effect snow in through the GTA, especially the west end of Lake Ontario. So with these sort of easterly winds off the lake, that's where we can start to see a little bit of lake effect and enhancement off of the lakes. So we did have a little bit of lake effect snow in through Burlington and Hamilton Waterdown this morning. But with this system, as we head through this evening, this is where we'll start to see those amounts pick up for the western end of Lake Ontario. So what this lake enhancement will do is enhance those snowfall totals a little bit. So if you are in the west end of Lake Ontario, those snowfall rates are going to be a little bit higher than, let's say, eastern parts of the GTA and just further north as well. So if you're in Hamilton, you do have a brief period where you can get into, Milton. If you're in Milton, you can get a brief period of lake enhancement this evening. It won't last too long just because of the dynamics of the system. And that's also the same with Etobicoke. Etobicoke might just be a little bit too far to the east to really see those numbers increase a lot from the lake enhancement, but it's definitely something that we'll be watching throughout the night to see how heavy that snow does push into the region.
You know, because we've been answering specific questions, Matt, we're getting more and more specific questions. So Peterborough. Will Peterborough see freezing rain tomorrow? Will Peterborough be one of the cities that sees temperatures warm up enough for freezing rain? I mean, I feel I can answer this question, but I'm going to leave it to you because you have the maps to show it. But it's legitimate. A lot of people hearing the words freezing rain gets people nervous, obviously, with storms like this. So what are Peterborough's chances?
Yeah, so Peterborough, as we head through this evening, that snow really picks up through the overnight hours. Now, when we look at tomorrow morning, when we start to see a little bit of that rain pushing along the lake shores of eastern Lake Ontario, we aren't going to see that rain as far north as Peterborough. So at this point in time, looks like Peterborough is all snow with this event. But if you're down closer to the 401 through Cobourg, Oshawa, that's when you're going to start to see a little bit of that rain pushing in. You might even see a little bit of ice pellets pushing to Peterborough along with that snow as well. And that would be very briefly.
Okay, yes, very briefly. Good news. But, I think for people who love the snow, this is going to be a good event for many of them, including in Peterborough. I think right now people just really have to pay attention to what's closed and what's not. Our Mark Robinson seems to be struggling a little bit out there. What happened, Mark? What's going on?
Oh, I'm falling into the ditch. I'm falling into the ditch just for you, Kim, just to show you,
right.
What happens when you get in the car and you get in the ditch. You just sort of fall off camera. There you go. No, I mean, it's definitely really ramping up here just south of Guelph. Just seeing the snowfall rates increasing. It's not covering the roads yet, but when I look over at Highway 6 here, and Highway 6 is a fairly busy highway, it's just starting to cover a little bit. We did see a couple plows go by. They were treating the roads, but they were definitely headed very fast down to the 401 to start to treat those roads down there because we are getting into the time where everybody's traveling back home. If you're out and about tonight, do keep in mind that from here on, it just gets worse. I mean, there's just no way of getting around that. Definitely seeing, like as I look around, I'm seeing the winds kicking the snow off the hills, which does tell me that you may get into whiteout conditions, or at least, conditions that make it a little trickier to see, if not full whiteout conditions. So it's just going to get so much worse, and I would definitely say, just stay in if you can. But one thing, Kim, I do want to point out, we Ontarians, we're kind of used to winter. We can handle this. We can handle it. It's all good. It's not going to be end of the world type snow, but it definitely is going to make life just a little bit more difficult, and a little bit more apt to have people stay home and have some hot chocolate. That's what I'm going to do when I'm done here.
Sage advice, and I'll be talking to you later. And I know Mark Robinson will be back in the morning, 7 a.m. for a live stream here at the Weather Network. So tune in for that. And Mark, I'll talk to you later. So stay warm and dry until that happens. Keep in mind, TTC are going to be on the roads. They have extra buses through the overnight. Uber, if you were planning on taking an Uber, prices are surging tonight as well, because there will be a lot of people who want to take an Uber rather than drive. MTO, about 1,400 pieces of equipment will be on the road. Give those plows extra room. Hydro, talking about having people at the ready just in case power is lost. Pearson, getting ready for possible cancellations and delays. And again, if you are concerned about school and school buses, check with your local school board. Often they do have social media pages as well, where they will make an announcement, and some are already doing so today, like in Ottawa. I'm going to check back in with meteorologist Matt Grinter, who's been following the storm for the last couple of days. It looks like it's coming to fruition, and what I've noticed, Matt, is that things changed very dramatically from the moment we started this live stream chatting with Mark to what is happening now with Mark, and that's what people can anticipate moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got the radar up here right now so that we can take a quick look to see what is now happening. What we've noticed is we're starting to see a lot more of that blue pushing into the GTA and Eastern Ontario as well, or sorry, east of the GTA. So we are seeing some light snow in through the GTA. London, Sarnia, we've got that snow a little bit heavier at this point in time. And even we're starting to notice, are we getting some of those warmer temperatures down in through Windsor, where we'll start to see a little bit of that mixed precipitation. So, and I forgot to answer the question earlier for Wallaceburg, but Wallaceburg, you are seeing snow at this point in time, and throughout the entirety of the event as well, you are looking at snow for this as well. So looking across southern Ontario, just doing a quick recap of timing here. By the time we get into the late rush hour commute, all of southwestern Ontario is in this snow. Ottawa, you're starting to see this snow push in. And then we've got a little bit of that mixed precipitation that moves in overnight, just staying south of Wallaceburg. So that's where we'll be looking at just snow for those parts of southwestern Ontario. Becoming really heavy overnight for Toronto, for Ottawa, and Montreal. And then we'll start to see that clear out through the morning hours for southwestern Ontario, through the GTA, and then Ottawa. We'll start to see that clear out into the evening hours. And here's a quick recap of our snowfall forecast. North of the GTA, 25 to 35 centimeters of snow for places like Barrie, Orillia, Bancroft, Algonquin, Parry Sound. We've already seen a lot of heavy snow up there this winter, so this is just adding more to that. And then areas along the Lake Erie shorelines, a little bit less with that mixing. And we've talked about the GTA, Toronto, from Hamilton all the way to Cobourg, 15 to 20 centimeters of snow. And then Ottawa, 25 to 35 centimeters, one of your bigger events that you've seen in the past couple of years. And from there, we are going to see that continue into Thursday. So that's a quick recap for Ontario there, Kim.
Ooh, yeah, there's lots to talk about, Matt, and we've got all of this moving to Atlantic Canada, and our friends in the Maritimes can look ahead now and say, okay, this is what we need to be ready for. We had a group of seniors doing a tour of the Weather Network today, Matt, and one of the questions they wanted to know was about shoveling. Is it best to wait till the event is over, or is it better to shovel a little bit at a time as the system goes through?
Yeah, so the tough part is a lot of that snow is falling through the overnight for the GTA. My technique is smaller little shovels, because that's going to save my back. I don't want to twist the wrong way, so I'll do probably a couple different shovels when I get home tonight through the overnight hours, and then also early tomorrow morning.
Okay, good advice. Yeah, and give yourself lots of extra time, especially if you're hoping to drive tomorrow morning. Some people are, other people won't have to. This might be one of those times where if you work from home or you have the choice to work from home, you better do it. We here at the Weather Network, they're taking very good care of us here as well, making sure that we're safe tonight, putting us up in a hotel, which is great news. So even though we will be working late into the night and throughout this storm, everybody is going to be safe. Same thing for our morning crew as well. So some good news. We will have live coverage on Thursday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, so you can see what's happening with the storm, because again, a lot of this is going to be happening through the overnight. You'll be sleeping through much of it if you're lucky, and then in the morning you will, you'll wake up to see what has transpired. And again, check with your local school board to find out if schools are closing. A lot of them are already closing for the evening. Any kind of extracurricular or offices are already closing now because they don't want to take any chances. Again, Ottawa buses canceled for tomorrow. We'll see what transpires. So stay safe on the roads. That's number one. Don't go out if you don't have to. And if you have the opportunity to get out and play in the snow, do that as well. Thanks for joining us for our live stream here at the Weather Network.